Staying all the way to driver's right makes an already complex turn 1 even more complex and difficult, so I like to stay a little more to the left side of the track at the pit exit so that I can make sure I have enough time to get the car in a neutral state before the braking zone and ensure that I can get my braking done in a straight line before turn-in. Turn 1, Horseshoe, third gear. You can see here that the left track edge moves inside a little bit during the braking zone, so you can't get all the way to driver's left without having to turn the steering wheel during braking. Notice that it's a downhill braking zone that switches to an uphill. This means that the rear end will get light in the middle of your braking. If you're still turning, you could overload the left side tires and spin. If you're at maximum braking, the balance shift could cause a rear wheel to lock. I'm going to threshold brake just after the 3 marker, then turn in about the 1 marker and carry heavy trail braking almost all the way to apex. Note that the inside 2/3 of the track is off camber from the 1 marker to the curbing. I'm expecting 2 things to happen. The first is for the car to pick up understeer as the front end clears the crown, and then the second is for an increase in oversteer as the rear end clears the crown while I'm cornering. As I come down to the curbing, I'm off throttle rolling the car through and still dialing in steering until I hit the apex right at the end of the curbing. I'm returning to throttle as quickly as the front tires will let me, which isn't very fast. Turn 2, still third gear. There's a small dip in the track between T1 and T2 that will cause the car to pick up understeer before the track returns its camber in turn 2. I'm unwinding the wheel in anticipation of understeer. Since I'm so worried about the front grip, I'm not stressing about being at the curb for apex. The goal is to be at full throttle with no understeer from the apex of T1 into T3. This is an unnumbered corner, but I think of it as NASCAR 1 and of T3 as NASCAR 2. There's no real reference for turn-in, but I tend to turn in as soon as the car is neutral once I've moved to driver's right after turn 2. 1 steering input should carry me to apex and put me on the right line for NASCAR 2. Turn 3, NASCAR 2, third gear. There's a lot of stuff going on here that can cause you to spin, and of course, it's a corner that separates the fastest drivers from the pack. Notice that the track is off camber all the way to turn in, and that there's a small rise just before turn in. The off camber part means that it's very easy to get the car to push to the outside of the track before the braking zone, which will then force you into an awkward state for braking. The small rise means that the car tends to get loose during braking. Focus on staying within your abilities here. This corner has prevented many a driver from winning a position battle. My primary reference point is the small building directly in front of the car in this shot. As the building centers in front of my car, I start unwinding the wheel. When the car is pointed about halfway between the small building and the lone tree to the left, I center the wheel briefly while I get on the brakes as hard as I'm comfortable doing. I drop down a gear to third and turn in. I don't mind hitting the apex curb, but I'm careful with the car over the transition. The big concern is ensuring I don't drop a wheel on exit, as that almost always guarantees a spin. Turn 4, left hook, third gear. I think it's better to stay in third gear between NASCAR 2 and left hook than it is to briefly be in fourth. The braking zone for left hook is so short that it's easy to miss the downshift. Note that there's a small depression right before the braking zone and a small rise in the braking zone before turn-in. The car likes to suck to the right on the approach and get very loose at turn-in coming over the crest. Go for a super late apex using lots of curb. You really want to be on the left side of the track on exit. As you can see, my apex was a little too soon and I was too much in the middle of the track for turn 5. You want to be to full power as soon as possible, as you'll carry that speed for a significant amount of track time. Turn 5. The power on understeer present in the baseline setup meant I had to lift to get the car to tuck in. Try to be flat on the throttle if you can. Take as much of the curb as you can, as it'll effectively widen the track, and you need every inch you can get here since the car will push due to the rise in track on exit. Turn 5A. Note that the track crests on the race line and then goes to off camber for 5A. The car is going to continue to push through this section, but a well-timed throttle lift as the front end clears the crest can get the front end to tuck in and get you on the right line through the snake. Turns 6 and 6A, the snake. I think that a good setup will allow you to go flat through here. You can see I had to lift to keep the baseline setup from understeering off the track. Use the curbs, but be careful of the first two overwhelming the front tires. Turn 7, the uphill, third gear. There are a couple of things to notice on the approach. The first is that the left side of the track is in a slight depression in the braking zone, with a small rise right where the left track edge has that tuck in. For a braking marker, I'm timing it to about halfway between when the car brakes into the trackside clearing on the left side and the end of the green fencing up on the hill on the right side. I start my turn in just a little before the dirt patch. After turn in, the car starts to climb out of the depression and across the crown in the road. It's just enough to create understeer in the left front. Then as the car crosses the transition in the track and begins the sharp climb, the front end is going to tuck in sharply and oversteer is likely. You can see me correct for that and end up too far to the inside on the track. Apex at the very end of the curb, but try not to be on the curb as I am, as the big bump in the curb upsets the balance of the car pretty badly. You can see I went too far to driver's left while correcting the oversteer from bouncing off of the curb. On exit, you want the left side tires to just kiss the white paint at the verge. Turn 8, third gear. Use all of the curb on T8 that you can without upsetting the car or getting a 1X. Turn 9, up into fourth gear. Again, use all of the curb that you can, but ensuring that the car is to driver's right on exit, as turn in for the much more important turn 10 is right after T9. Turn 10, fourth gear. My reference point is when the gap in the tree line is to the right of the inside of the corner, or as the car passes the end of the turn 9 curve. Once again, the track is off camber at turn in all the way to apex, so the car biases to understeer. I really want to be flat on the throttle here, but the baseline setup power on understeer means I'm lifting to get the front end to tuck. Turn 11, fourth gear. iRacing's corner numbering is funky here, but I consider this first right to be turn 11 and the second right as turn 12, with the kink left to be turn 13. As I come off the T-turn curbing, I'm beginning one smooth steering input that will take me through turns 11 and turns 12. Because of the downhill drop after the T11 apex, the car will understeer for a pretty significant chunk of time if you let it. If you have to come off throttle, it's usually best to do that as early as you can, so I'm breathing off the throttle right before the apex of turn 11. Turn 12. As I apex off of T12, I'm trying to get the car to be in a straight line all the way through the roller coaster. Turn 14, roller coaster, third gear. Once again, there's a depression in the braking zone followed by a small rise. It's just enough to cause the left front to understeer if you're not paying attention. I'm braking about a car's length before the end of the curb and trailing some brake at turn in. Since the car is probably trying to oversteer, I'm trying to feed in some throttle to keep the back end from coming around. I apexed about a car's length too early here, but quickly go to full power and easy through turn 15. Turn 16, fourth gear. I'm brush braking about halfway through the dirt patch. The braking is as much for getting the car to turn in as it is to slow the car down. I consider turn 16 to be the second most important corner on track, as it sets you up for the hogpen complex, which is the most important corner on track as it leads on to the longest, fastest straight with the best overtaking opportunity. So with that in mind, I'm going for a very late apex here, and I'm trying to make sure that the car is as far left as I can make it before the first part of hogpen. Turn 17, hogpen, fourth gear. The first part of hogpen is actually a compromise corner for 17A hogpen part oink. If you go flat through T17, the car will pick up terminal understeer on the climb up to 17A, and you'll be lucky to stay on track. Instead, a small amount of brush braking to get the car to turn in, and then roll the throttle until the car comes off of the inside curb. A small lift of the throttle may be necessary to keep the car on the right line for 17A in the middle of the depression. If you do 17 right, then 17A is as easy as bacon.